Can everybody see this screen? Yeah, thumbs up, thumbs up. Great. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to this little masterclass called What the Heck is Ethical Non-Monogamy? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ari Kardosh. I'm a love and relationships expert. I've been doing this for a long time. I'll introduce myself in just a minute though. For those of you who are here, welcome, welcome. This is the first time I have presented this masterclass on a call. I used to teach this class all around the world a long time ago, and it was really fun. I am also not seeing the chat. 1 second. There we go. I want to make sure I can see you all. So as we get started, I would love to just know who's here. So if you would, please utilize your chat function and type number 1. Where are you calling in from? So just let me know, number 1, where are you calling in from? Go ahead and type it in there so I have an idea of where people are in the world. Chicago, LA, Bali, Perth, California. Great. Whoa. Lots of Bali in the US, which makes a lot of sense to me. Ooh, Playa del Carmen. Nice. All right, number 2, if you want to, everything is consensual here. How are you currently identifying for your preferred relationship structure or status? Do you identify as monogamous, solo poly, polyamorous, swinger, curious, relationship anarchist? How are you? Undetermined, all the above, married, monogamous, single, open to new ideas, committed and open, committed and curious, monogamous, married and open. We have quite the mix in here today. Sweet. And also, what brought you to this masterclass? What are you really curious about? What brought you here? What are you curious about today? Honest relationship structures, learning about different relationship realities. Relationships and communication, perspective, curious about different relationships in a consenting and open way. Always want to learn more about relationships, especially from the professionals. Context, cool, great. This is fun. I'm excited to go into all this with you. So let me just tell you a little bit about me as we're getting started. Number 1, I'm a mama and a wife, and I'm a lover of love, and I pursue that so ferociously in my life. Got 2 beautiful children and an amazing husband. People often ask me how I identify. Like, are you open? Are you? And I'm like, we've been at all, and we never know what we're gonna be. We worked really hard to have agility and trust in our relationship, and we just get to be whatever that is. And so I have been monogamous. I've been celibate. I've been as a polyamorous person with lots of different poly subtitles, which we'll talk about tonight. And I've also been momogamish, where I've just wanted to be a mom and be really focused on that and focus on that role of being a mom. And so the idea of other relationships was just not something that was interesting to me for a while. So that's a little bit. I used to work at Amazon.com, do leadership development there for about 5 years. I have a best-selling book. It's called Relationship Agreements. It's right there behind me. And my husband and I have part of our love story featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I just love, love, love working with my clients. I do a lot of private coaching. I do run 2 different group programs, one for people who are in relationship and one for people who are single and want to be prepared for love, ready for love, and looking at old patterns they want to shift out of. So do a lot of work around communication and how we can move through the things that keep us stuck in how we give and receive love, so we have even more love. All right. So what the heck is ethical non-monogamy? That's what we're here for today. Thanks, Mike, the Ari Kardosh fan. So let's just start with a little tour of the world of non-monogamy, both ethical and not so much. This is all taken from an amazing book. I'll give you the resource at the end of the tour. So imagine that open relationships is this big umbrella. this big umbrella term that we can look at for how do you describe any relationship that isn't the traditional monogamous one. And within that, there's a lot of context and a lot of different titles. Outside of that, there's a subset when I say not so ethical. There is a subset of being in a non-monogamous relationship structure, which is just cheating. Cheating is a form of non-monogamy. And I wouldn't classify that as ethical at all, but it's there. Within open relationships, there's a lot of different options that are consensual. And when I say ethical, I'm really talking about consenting adults are choosing to be in this type of relationship structure. And there's many different reasons why you might choose to be in it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But within that, there's lots of different types. And I want to give you some ideas of the taste of the different flavors of what's possible. So one of them that's very popular is, and getting a lot of press in the past couple of years, is polyamorous relationships. These are, and I'm going to give you my definition. So there are a million great resources out there on all the things I'm going to talk about today. And each one of these subjects and these little puzzle pieces could be a full day workshop. So I'm really going to try to boil it down and save room for questions tonight. But polyamory is this idea that you can be in multiple loving relationships. It doesn't mean specifically that you're having sex with multiple people, or it doesn't mean specifically that you are deeply in love in some sort of emotionally loving relationship. It can be anything. It can be many, many, many different things. It's kind of a choose your own adventure relationship structure. Usually it's defined by having multiple meaningful loving relationships, and however you define that loving relationship. It doesn't have to be sexual. It could be cognitive. It could be this deep friendship connection. There's lots of different styles. Within that, there is a subset called polyfidelity. Polyfidelity is we are connected, usually sexually, but not always, but we are connected in a specific relationship structure with specific people. So we are faithful within this group. And it could be many different structures. It could be like 3 people. It could be 5 people. If 5 people are involved, we're all together in this closed container. So we're not bringing new people in. We're not sleeping with other people outside of our group. We're fidelis, but within our definition of who's involved in the relationship. By the way, if at any point in time you have questions, please type them in the chat. And I'll also be making time at the end to go through this. Another subset is religious or social polygamy. And this is where you've probably heard about this in certain cults or certain religious sects where it might be okay to have multiple partners for certain religious or spiritual reasons. There's also unicorn polyamory. Unicorn polyamory is, unicorns are basically that mythical creature that's out there that you think is just waiting. Oftentimes when people are, I'm not even gonna say people, oftentimes when I see couples decide, oh, we wanna be open, we're just gonna go out and find, and they describe to me what we would call a unicorn. A unicorn is something that people are hunting for and rarely actually find. And it's this person who is usually, a single person who really wants to join a couple and isn't at all threatening and just loves X, Y, and Z that the couple love, and is, emotionally, sexually, everything available to them. And it's like the perfect fit, like that magical perfect fit. And so a lot of times when I see couples say, okay, we're going to become open, we're going to go find this insert thing here, insert unicorn description here. That's what they're hunting for. And they do exist. Unicorns do exist, and they're harder to come by than most people think. There's also something called monopoly or poly-mono relationships. I jokingly call them monopolies. But it is possible to have it where one person is identifies as monogamous and the other person identifies as polyamorous. So this could look like, for example, if I am the monogamous one right now, then I'm just spending all the time with myself, all this extra time. And for me, it's not extra time, right? I have a mom, I run a business, maybe that is how much energy and time and desire I have. And anything extra, I want to go back into me, and I don't want to give it to anybody else. So I feel really confident and secure. And what I really desire is to be monogamous with this one person. Whereas my partner might be feeling like they feel really confident and secure when they're in other relationships at the same time. And they may have another partner or more, and everybody's consenting. It doesn't feel like it's not fair or uneven. It's just, okay, this is what fits us both right now in this stage of our life and what feels really good. And we feel more authentically ourselves when we do that. There's also just dating around. So this is the most common form, I think, that everybody is familiar with for being in a non-monogamous relationship, is when you're in that single phase and you're just dating around and you're going on to these different applications, or going to the bars and you're meeting folks, or you're going to your meetup groups and meeting folks. And yes, I will post the slides. And when you are just exploring, and that is part of ethical non-monogamy, it can be non-ethical. And I want to be careful here, because this is an edgy one. This is an edgy one that I see, because in mainstream culture, when you are single and dating, it's not usually built in to be super transparent about what you're doing with other people. It's like, oh, I'm single, so I don't have to share everything, which can get a little bit dangerous, especially if you're sexually active with other people. So if you're single and dating, you've got several people that you are exploring deep emotional intimacy with, maybe not to commitment level yet, or sexual intimacy with, maybe not to commitment level yet, but you're not sharing that, it can be dangerous. And so I want to be really careful about the importance of still hanging on to your integrity and transparency when you're dating around, of what still needs to be shared for the other people you're involved with, health and safety. Another form is the 100-mile rule. 100-mile rule basically means that we are married and or maybe not married, we are monogamous and we're in this committed relationship, except when we travel. And this is funny, there's a lot of people do that. So when we are outside of like 100-mile radius of our home or whatever it might be, when we're traveling, then it's okay to see somebody else, as long as it's far away from our community. So that is another way of doing non-monogamy. There's also commerce. This is where you would hire someone, pay someone for their involvement. It could include sex or not. You can also hire people for entertainment. But this is where I know several couples who when they're opening up, they want to hire a professional to come in and give an experience or teach teach how to give an erotic massage, and they're bringing that into the relationship. And it could be, and that's just one form of non-monogamy. There's also don't ask, don't tell. So what I see a lot of in relationships when it comes to people who are opening up is there's two different extremes. And I talk about this in my book. There's two different extremes that I often see. One is the don't ask, don't tell method, and the other one is the fire hose method. Don't ask, don't tell relationships are really based on, we are open, we can see other people, but we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to say, this is actually what's happening. Maybe we won't share any details, or maybe we're only going to share like, oh, I'm going out with this person, or I'm going out on a date. Sometimes it's absolutely nothing. And there's just this mysteriousness about it. And it's happening, but you don't actually talk about it. And that's one form of handling non-monogamy. On the other extreme is the fire hose method, where people tell everything, all the details, and that could also be a little bit much. So that we can talk about that another time, and what the middle ground is. Within ethical non-monogamy, within non-monogamy in general, there's also BDSM, which stands for bondage, discipline, sadism, and masochism. This is your power play. This is, and DS means dominance and submissiveness. Non-monogamy. So it's playing with power structures and sensation. And this is your kink. If you've heard of kinky play, this is that. And so oftentimes within non-monogamy, maybe one person is just really enjoys kinky sex or kinky sexual acts. When I say kink, I mean anything that feels taboo to them. So it may not be totally taboo to everybody, but it might be, or maybe their partner isn't into it. Like I've seen people where one person just felt really aroused by, I've seen many strange and unique and beautiful things, but one of them was one person felt really, really aroused by food play and just getting to like rub fun like frostings and things all over their body. And their partner just wasn't into it and didn't have any interest, but had zero problem with their partner going out and doing that kind of play with other people. And in that situation, it didn't even involve sex. It was purely sexual arousal through the food play, but there was no intercourse involved, and they felt complete. And so it worked really well. I've seen other situations where there is sex involved, but it's with that kinky dynamic that the other person doesn't usually desire with them. There's lots of different ways to do this, or even if both people or all people involved are kinky, there's different types of kinks. And so getting to really create a safe space to explore that together with other people without so much pressure or judgment, or maybe there's more freedom, lots of reasons to get involved in that kind of play. There's also swinging. Within swinging, swinging is high level. Swinging has been around for a long time. And it's based on this idea of people who are usually in a primary relationship. They're usually committed, oftentimes just a couple. The couple will go to different places to meet other swingers, and they will exchange each other as sex partners for the evening or for that event or whatever it is that's happening. And then they go back to their usual structure afterwards. So you go to an event, you can play with somebody else, but then you already know that you're going to be going home with your spouse or whatever that is. You go back as a unit, and that's different than many of these other structures here. There's soft swinging where you are more involved in, you can go anywhere and do some play, or there's whole closed group swinging where it's more like fidelis, where it's like, this is our group, this is who we swing within. It's not as exploratory. There's no right or wrong for any of these choices that you're wanting to explore. It's what fits you best in this moment, and what are you and anybody else involved consenting to. And this is really important. And so today, if any of this is new for you, I invite you to just be curious and be like, oh, what would I be interested in? And I'll be giving you a worksheet to look at to get to pique your curiosity more towards the end. There's also just casual sex. Like, maybe I just want to be involved having casual sex. And that can be done in many different ways, but with communication and transparency of like, yeah, excuse my language, but I'm just looking for a fuck buddy. Yeah, that's what I want. Great. There are lots of people out there who that feels really good for them. And if that's what's going on in this period of your life, if that's what fits you, then if done with integrity and transparency, I think it can be a really powerful thing for many people. And then there's also event sex. Event sex we're usually monogamous, except for when there's like Burning Man, except for Burning Man. That's the big one I hear all the time. Yeah, we're monogamous all year until Burning Man comes, and then we let that go, and we say, okay, whatever happens at Burning Man, right? Or if we go to conferences, work conferences, that's fine. Like whatever happens there stays there. It's like Las Vegas, but that is the one time we are not going to be in our traditional monogamous relationship. Excuse me. So this is the whole map. There's even more to this. It gets even more complex, but this is Franklin Vo put this out, and I really just enjoy this as a general map of, wow, this is way more complex than just monogamy, or just what I thought it was of, oh, people are obviously engaging in this one way of being in an open relationship. So there's lots of different flavors, and you get to choose your own flavor, or even create something that works even better for you if it doesn't fit in here. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to pause for a moment here and just ask if there's any questions that people have around this roadmap. If you want to unmute yourself or put it in the chat, go for it. I'll pause for just a minute. Feeling good? Okay. Solo poly. Solo poly is, thank you. Solo poly is all about people who are identified as, I love being single. I don't want to be in a committed relationship with one person, but I do want to be, but I do identify as polyamorous. I love being with multiple people. So I may, instead of getting into a committed, I'll give you one more word too. Instead of being in like committed, like I am going to be with this one person, I'm going to be polyamorous and be kind of dating around, but as a single person. I don't want to become in a structured, I don't want to go into a structured relationship where it's like, I'm this couple or triad or whatever it may be. And there's another term called relationship anarchy. A relationship anarchy is not on this list, but it's a big one also. And that's basically the idea of like, I want to be in whatever form of relationship I want to be in right now, whatever that may be. And I am going to, I have my own ethical values around how I'm going to show up, and you, whoever I'm involved with, you have your own, and we are going to trust each other and have transparency, but we get to do whatever we want at any point in time. We're going to handle our own emotions around that. And there's lots of different ways this can be done, and lots and lots of work that needs to go into that to really be self-aware with all of these, when done well, especially from, I'm not going to say all of them because cheating's on this list. When all of these from an ethical non-monogamous standpoint are done well, there's so much self-awareness and communication skills built in and transparency built in. I'm not going to say transparency with everything because there's also bias and tell on here. So like, we'll see. We're going to get into this even more. And yes, Scott and Carrie, I have totally been listening on you for the past 2 months. So dun, dun, dun. All right. So let me just simplify this. By this, I mean non-monogamy. There's 3 basic models for open relationships. There's the primary and secondary model, which basically means that there's, one. So my husband and I usually, when we are practicing open relating, we usually use the primary secondary model. It's not for everybody, and there's pros and cons to all of these. Primary meaning like we are our primary relationship. My husband and I are our primary partners. So we are really focusing the most amount of time and energy and resources on our relationship. Anybody else that we are involved with would be secondary. And I really dislike that title. And there's lots of better ones for it, but this is the traditional way that people have talked about it. So be very careful. It comes with all sorts of its own unique challenges, but it basically means that whoever we're involved with outside of our primary relationship doesn't get as much time and energy and focus. And it works really well for us because we have young kids, and that's a decision that we have made for us, but who knows what would happen in the future. The second model is there are multiple primary partners. So we could have multiple partners that are all, I'm gonna say equal. They're all equal. They all get equal amounts of time, energy, love, focus. And within that, there can be a closed model where the entire system is a locked unit pretty much, where all the primary partners know each other. There's no new people coming in. Maybe everybody is sexually involved, maybe not, but it is closed. And there's an open model where you're primary partners, but you can bring in new people from the outside. Yeah, somebody said that's the thing. Everyone has needs, and they're usually different. Yeah, everybody has very different needs. Always. Humans are complicated. So this is just one way of looking at it. And then the primary secondary model is really where the couple establishes a committed primary relationship, what I've been talking about. And then everybody else falls into the secondary spot. And then finally, the third main model is multiple primary partners model. And within that, there's 2 variations. So there's the closed model. This is called polyfidelity, where I just briefly explain that, but this is basically saying that people are exclusive. You can be emotionally exclusive, sexually exclusive, but it's a fidelis unit. It's a locked unit. Like this is our group that we are. I'm going to call it a polycule if you're polyamorous. It's the structure of who's involved, and if you're closed or not. You can say if you're closed or not. A polycule doesn't have to be closed. It can be open. The open model is where everybody gets the potential of becoming primary. In the model, non-primary partners model, a relationship may be casual or secondary, and there's generally no primary relationship in this open model. Does this make sense? I can't see everybody's fingers. Okay, if this is making sense to you, give me a little thumbs up or sparkly fingers. Yes, this makes sense. Thumbs up. Almost back to dating. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so I want to be curious what you all think. You're welcome to unmute yourselves or just type in the chat. When you think about opening a relationship or being in an open relationship of some sort, what do you think the challenges are? And I'm going to focus on ethical non-monogamy right now. What do you think that the challenges would be for being in such a relationship? You can unmute or you can just type in the chat. What are some challenges? Awkward conversations. Yep. Finding others that are interested in non-traditional relationships. Yep. Sharing time. Yep. Time and bandwidth to be there for everyone who needs you. Raising children.
The balance between being open, communication, and too much.
Yeah.
So that
totally
is kind of difficult, challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. Jealousy. I usually hear that.
Scott, so where do you find that line? I always want to ask too many questions. I always want to ask too many questions. She doesn't want to ask enough. So how do you find that line? You know, is it the balance between her and me? I guess, right?
Can I come back to that during the Q&A? That's a great question. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna ask you to remind me. And the key words we're going to talk about are inquire within. Any other challenges people are thinking of? Yeah. So here's some that I often hear. Someone might fall in love with somebody else, and you might be abandoned. There's a lot of fear on that. You might get an STI. STI means sexually transmitted infection, formerly known as STDs. What about socially? What do we tell our friends? What will our family think? What about our colleagues? How are we going to handle this? Mm-hmm. Other big ones I hear often are jealousy and other intense feelings. What are we going to do with that? NRE stands for new relationship energy. So what do you do when you have all of that, when you meet somebody new or your partner meets somebody new and they are feeling all those bubbles and excitement for this new person? What do you do with that? If you could mute yourselves, everyone, that'd be great. Also, people are saying understanding and establishing transparency. Yeah, so new relationship energy is a really big one that people are challenged with, whether you've been in open relationship structures for a long time or you're new to it. Can still be challenging because it's always a new person that's being brought in if you have that type of commitment. Time management. Oh my gosh, time management, such a huge challenge. I don't think people understand that this is one of the hardest things about being in an open relationship. I think people oftentimes think about all these wonderful aspects of, oh my gosh, we're going to have so much love or so much sex or whatever the story is that they're going to have so much of. And the problem is that time is very, very limited. And so how do you really stay on top of that with multiple people? And what happens if there's an agreement violation? What happens if we have set things in place to, we have our relationship agreements and then somebody breaks one? What do we do? And what about incompatibility? If things just aren't compatible as we're opening up our relationship and we're finding out this new things about ourselves through this experience. So what do you think some of these relationships can provide? What are some of the pros? What can open relationships possibly provide? Growth, fun and something new, help with parenting. Anything else? Exploration and expansion, learning, navigation, love, authenticity is a word I used earlier. Yes, authenticity. Great. Yeah. Usually when I ask people this question, the first thing I hear, which I didn't hear today, which I'm actually quite excited about, is more sex. I mean, more sex instantly. That's what we do this for, right? And there's so much more to it. And I think you guys named some beautiful, beautiful other aspects of being in these types of relationships. It can provide less pressure on a single partner to be it all or be everything. It can keep your current sex life more sexy. It can add more spice to it, bring in some new flavor, some new adventures. Oftentimes I hear this. This is what people think. I have heard many people want to open a relationship to quote unquote fix a current relationship that has gone stale. We're going to talk about this in a moment. It can often provide more connection. It can be a different type of connection, or it can be very exploratory. It can provide more autonomy, freedom, and sexual expression. You get to be more yourself authentically. It can help you keep a romantic mindset. It'd be like, oh yeah, how do we keep things fresh? And when you have other relationships, it can really bring in an aliveness and energy to it. If you choose it, if you choose that path. It's really being intentional with where you're bringing your energy. It can also add more support and financial flexibility, especially if you're creating like a larger family. And somebody mentioned parenting support. Totally, it can totally happen. Not for everybody, but for some people are forming families like this that are larger. So you have more support financially, spiritually, emotionally. All of it's there. It's just a larger structure, and people are romantically or physically or emotionally involved in a deeper way. It can definitely teach you a lot about conflict resolution skills and how to communicate, for sure. And one of the greatest benefits that I've seen is that when done well, being in an open relationship almost forces you into greater self-awareness, because you just have to navigate life in a totally different manner. And this is a pretty sure way to end a relationship that was not meant to be. One of the things, and when people come to me and they say, Ari, we're thinking about opening up our relationship. And first of all, I need to disclaim that I don't think there's any one right way to be in a relationship, monogamous, open, whatever. As long as people are being true to themselves and it's consensual and it's safe. And with those things in mind, a lot of times people will come to me and say, okay, we're really curious, we want to open up our relationship. And I say, great. Now we're going to look at your foundation. We're going to make sure that you guys are really solid. If you are in a monogamous relationship right now, that's what we look at, is like, how's your communication skills? What are you guys getting stuck on? How are you working on resolving your conflicts or handling when conflict comes up? Because if you're looking at this as a way to quote unquote solve or fix your relationship, I would comfortably bet a lot of money that it will not. And especially in the first year of opening up to other people, it can be extremely tricky and can be quite a trap. And I think that there's just so much that happens in the first year of learning to be open to other forms of love, giving and receiving love. And there's so much to learn about communication and connection in a way that isn't modeled well, or that, most of us have not had modeled. We don't see it. We didn't see it growing up by our parents, most of us. We didn't see it growing up modeled well in our communities or on TV. So we really are getting a blank slate and we have to figure it out. And thankfully, for those who are choosing this kind of relationship, there are now so many resources in the past, like 5 years especially, that just popped up that are really amazing. New TV shows and new books and new support groups and meetup groups and whole communities forming around these types of relationships. There's a lot out there that we have easier access to, because these types of relationships have been around for decades and longer and centuries. But we haven't really talked about it, or had to be okay to talk about, or be okay to experiment with or explore. So what I just say is, tread lightly if you're considering opening up, and just really do your homework and talk about hypotheticals and play with things and make sure you're feeling really solid if you are currently in a relationship before you go there. And if you're single, same thing, like do your homework, do your research. And if you are already in an open relationship and you're like, this is really cool, I just ask you to check in. Are you getting the right amount of support and resources? And are you doing the work to really make this a healthy type of connection. So I would love to pause here and give you a little exercise to do. But before we do the exercise, are there any questions about what I just talked about that are popping up for anyone? Everybody's good. Okay, let me pull this up. Excuse me. I'm not sure if I can share the file. So I'll just share it on my screen and I will post this in the group so you can see it. All right, give me a thumbs up when you can see this exercise. Thumbs up. Great, yay. All right, so this exercise is really cool. I will post this in the group so that you can access it when you want to. This is by an amazing woman who I absolutely adore. Her name is Kathy Labriola. She has done so much work around this topic, and especially around jealousy. Oh, if you don't know the group, Ellie, could you put a link to the group in the chat, please? It's my private Facebook group, and it'll also be going out in the emails since you registered about how to get into the group. It's free. It's just a closed Facebook group. And there's this will be posted in there, and many other resources that I have recorded and access to things are in there. So I want to do just step one for right now. And so if you can grab a pen and paper, that would be great. And we're just gonna do step one, but you can do the whole exercise on your own later on. So the question is, what is your experience in a monogamous relationship? So we're going to give yourself 10 points for every time you say yes to an answer. Okay. So, and don't worry about the no's right now. We're just going to count the yeses for 10 points. So your first question is, do you feel safe and secure due to sexual exclusivity? Sorry, I can't speak as well this morning. Exclusivity in this relationship? Yes or no? Next one. Did you experience deeper intimacy? This is really thinking about your monogamous romantic relationships you may have been involved with in the past. Did you feel more comfortable in this relationship? Yes or no? Were you able to be very honest with your partner about your feelings and needs? Yes or no? Did you feel sexually satisfied in that relationship? Do you believe that your partner was honest with you about their feelings and needs?
We lost track of it a little bit. Can you go back? Or the questions on a slide?
Yeah, can you see them on my screen too?
No, I'm seeing your presentation.
Can we start over?
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
You're going really fast.
Yeah, that would be
So also, if we're still living in hypothetical world, which Carrie and I have been,
yeah.
are these questions that we really can answer? I don't think that they are.
What is your experience in a monogamous relationship?
In a monogamous relationship. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
Let me
there we
back up,
go.
everybody.
I don't read so good sometimes.
It's all good. Let me try this again. Let me try this again. Okay. Can everybody now see this form on the screen?
Yes, but
Yes?
I
Okay,
do
great.
have a question. If we've
Yes.
been in a monogamous relationship and it was yes and then no, and it alternated between the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Great.
how would
And
I score that?
Yeah, great. And so this is going to just be the whole worksheet. We're not going to do all of it right now. We'll give you more context and help you get more clarity. But in general, what I see is when people are starting to consider opening up or pursuing some sort of relationship like that, they oftentimes are struggling with, am I even monogamous? And so I would say it's okay to have a mixture of yes and no. And just choose one relationship right now in your mind, or one phase of your relationship, and answer the questions, and then go back through and do the other phase or the other relationship that you're thinking of. And then you can look at both and use that as a kind of a balancing of like, wow, how did things change? What were the elements that were shifting there for me? Does that make sense? So for this run through, just choose one relationship and one context where you're feeling like in this phase of our relationship, if these are my answers.
So,
Okay.
and select one point in time in that relationship.
Yeah. And just see how it feels.
Okay.
And then you can go back. I think it's like 10 questions or less. And you can go back and just see, okay, now I'm going to do this other phase of our relationship. How did it feel and what shifted? And just take that as data points to look at of, oh, those felt very different. They can also shift between partners, right? Like one partner, you might have been monogamous with one partner and it felt this way. And then you think about another relationship and it felt this way. And a final way you can look at this is overall, because for some people, overall monogamy doesn't feel like it fits them.
Right.
They're like, wow, in general, I don't feel really good being exclusive sexually. And that could be your case also. So it could be in general. So whatever fits you. Now I want you to be really curious and use this as a tool to help you get curious, as a tool to help you explore and be like, oh, is there something more that I need to look at? And maybe it's going to solidify that monogamy is great for you. Maybe it's going to open up new possibilities of other things that might be good for you. Who knows? There's no right or wrong.
Okay.
All right. So now you can see the screen. First question. Did you feel safe and secure due to sexual exclusivity in this relationship? Yes or no? Next question. Did you experience deeper intimacy? Yes or no? Did you feel more comfortable in this relationship? Were you able to be very honest with your partner about your feelings and needs? Did you feel sexually satisfied in that relationship? Do you believe that your partner was honest with you about their feelings and needs? Did you find yourself being more focused and productive in your work and other life activities during that relationship? Did you feel that you and your partner were a good team and became more effective and creative through the synergy of this relationship than either of you had been on your own? And finally, did you enjoy spending most or all of your free time with your partner during that relationship and spending very little time alone or with other friends? All right, then count up the yeses. Give yourself 10 points for every yes. And if you scored more than 40 points, you had more than 4 yeses, you may be more naturally inclined towards a monogamous relationship than an open relationship. But if you score differently, then I'm going to put up this form and you can take a look at it later on, and it'll give you 2 more steps to kind of start to assess if you may be more inclined to exploring a more open relationship. So this is just an interesting tool to look at. I love interesting tools. You don't have to take it too seriously. But it is really, it gets people thinking. And this is found within Kathy Labriola's book called The Jealousy Workbook. It's a fantastic, fantastic workbook about how we manage our own jealousy and other big emotions that come up. All right. Any questions, comments, anything surprise anyone through this? Feeling good? All right. I want to make sure we have time for some Q&A too. So this was just the name of the book is The Jealousy Workbook by Kathy Labriola. I will put that link directly to her book in the group also under this with resources. And I will also include the book that the map came from. So I think that one was originally from More Than Two, which also has a really powerful website that gives you lots of definitions. It's a great starting point. So I'll give that website and I'll give you the book, the Jealousy Workbook link. All right. So this is a very high level. There's so much, like every single one. I mean, you could easily make this like a 2-week workshop just talking about all sorts of different aspects of open relating and what is it, ethical non-monogamy, and there are so many little rabbit holes here. So today I just really wanted to plant a seed of like, what is overall this thing that people keep talking about, and what is possible, and how do I even start to explore this? And just beginning here is a great place. So now I'm going to open it up for questions you may have. And I'm going to start with the inquire within question that I wrote down. So I think it was Scott that maybe asked, but it was about, how do we manage the conversation between us if we are already it doesn't have to be in an open relationship. Let's say you are in an open relationship. Usually there's these two extreme methods, one being the don't ask, don't tell, where you don't talk about anything. The other being the fire hose method, where it's just like, let me tell you everything. Let me tell you what happened sexually and emotionally and all the ways on the date, which can also be a lot and maybe more than what the other person wants to hear. And it can be a little bit, it can also cause trauma. So I created something that I call inquire within. If you want to read more detail about it, it's in my book. There's a whole section on it. But basically the idea is that the person who is receiving the information is the one who is in charge of the flow. So they get to turn on the water hose as much as they feel capable and ready for and desiring of. So oftentimes when I see people in open relationships, one person will be more interested in hearing about the physical connection. Like, oh, how was the sex? What did you guys do? Like, did you like it? That sort of thing. And the other person is often more interested in the emotional connection. And they want to know, oh, like, are you falling in love? Is it like, how are you, how's your connection going? That sort of deep questions on the emotional front. And they don't often want to hear about the other side, or they don't care to hear about the other side, or whatever their situation is. So if you're doing inquire within, I'll give a quick example. If my husband were to go out on a date and then come back home, then I get to check in with myself and I get to ask what kind of things I want to know about. And we've already agreed ahead of time to do what we call chapter stops. So I might say, hey, honey, how was your date tonight? And he'll be like, oh, it was great. And then he'll stop and he won't volunteer more information. And I'll say, oh, what did you do? And he'll say, oh, we went to a show and then we got dinner together and then we went back to her place. And he stops. And then I get to decide, do I feel complete or do I want to know more? And if I want to know more, what do I want to know more about? And I can ask these questions. So I might be really curious of like, oh, like you went back to her house. How was it? What did you do? How are you feeling about your connection? What was sexually? What did you do? I can ask these types of questions if that's within our agreements. And, and for us, we have a true commitment to transparency and honoring whatever the person asks, receives an answer. And I may not be ready to ask these questions right now. Maybe I've had a long day, or I'm just not emotionally prepared for that, or like I need to deal with my own stuff that's already coming up from the fact that he's coming back from a date, or whatever's there. And I'll say, okay, thank you. I'm feeling complete for now. And then tomorrow, maybe I have more questions and I want to check in with him more than at another time. There's one caveat that is really important, is that anything that may be risky for me, any red flags, we call it, that those are volunteered right away. And it's not like you're waiting for the person who is receiving the information to ask, so did the condom break? Or so did anything else that's more of a red flag occur, right? That's not my responsibility to ask. It's the person who experienced it to identify the red flag right away to protect the health and the safety of the relationship and your partner. Does that make sense? Silence, yes. Any questions on anything? This is super high level and I'd love to help you all drop in wherever you need to drop into. Everybody good? Wow. Any questions on anything to do with ethical non-monogamy?
Oh, I did ask a question in the chat. I was asking what other red flag examples might be.
Oh yeah. So usually red flag examples, I mean, it really depends on the individual, but usually red flags are around, like if you have a committed partner that you're sexually, and usually it's more around sexual connection. So if you have a committed partner that you're seeing, if a condom broke, that might be a red flag. Or if you're not yet with a partner, but you go on a date and somebody has an STI that it has an STI. That doesn't mean it's a deal breaker. Most STIs are just and STIs are infections, and most of them are just about social shaming. And it's not actually a big deal. There's usually medication and other ways you can treat things. And so a red flag may be, oh, this person I'm on a date with and I'm feeling attracted to has an STI. Can you, my primary partner, and I have a discussion about that and what that would mean for us and what feels safe for us to engage in and what does not, because it's a mutual decision about our health. All right, anything else?
Can you maybe talk about some agreements that like you might have ahead of time, or like maybe you don't want to hear about something or you do want to hear about something, and like agreeing on those things? Does that happen in your
Totally.
relationships?
Totally. So when I'm working on people who are getting ready to open up their relationship, I'm really looking for, how are you prepared for this? We're going to play with the hypotheticals, and you won't moving into open relationships is a lot like walking on this is going to sound terrible, but like walking in a desert that has landmines in it, and you're going to step on a landmine. You're going to. And what we can do is we can reduce the amount of shrapnel damage. And so how we can do that is to just start being prepared and talking through the hypotheticals of like, what would feel really safe to each of you. And oftentimes when I see people starting their open relationship journeys, they start with a lot of agreements. They'll be like more like tight because we don't have the time and the trust yet established of like, this is how it works. And then over time, when you start realizing like, it's actually safe for me to go out and have other partners. It's safe for my partner to go out and have other partners. And we still are investing in our love. We're still investing in our relationship. And once that comes, a lot of the rules, I'm going to take the word rules off. A lot of the agreements we had in place are no longer needed because you have the time and the trust established. In the beginning, you may not have that. So how do you feel safe? How do you dip your toes in the water in a way that feels really good? And so that's where you're going to start creating agreements. And I'd say it's what do you need to feel safe and seen, and making clear requests. And that's going to be very much specific to the individual. And so it's looking at like, what is maybe you have some trauma in the past, or maybe you want to have something be sacred for you. That's a big one. Sacredness. Like if your partner calls you Pookie Poo, and maybe you want to be the only Pookie Poo, and you can make that request, right? And that could be really important to you. And you might not even know it until you one day see them call, post on Facebook Pookie Poo to somebody else. And you're like, oh my God, world explosion. I thought I was the only Pookie Poo. So if that it's like starting to think about what is sacred for you that helps you feel really seen and heard and loved. In fact, that's a really great exercise of each of you sitting down, whoever's involved in your relationship right now, like, how do you feel seen, heard, and loved? And just making a list of what is it? Oh, when you make me coffee in the morning. Oh, and when we get to go to this specific restaurant together. Oh, maybe that's something we want to put into our agreements when we're starting to open up, that maybe this restaurant is special for us and we're not going to take anybody else there. Okay, cool. Or, and just seeing like, oh, when you give me long back scratches. Okay, well, maybe do you want to make a request? The back scratches are a special thing between you and I? Or is it something that doesn't really matter to us, that we were like, oh, we love sharing that love, and it feels okay to allow other people to give you a back scratch. Okay. So starting to lean into like, okay, well, how do each of you feel seen, heard, and loved, and what kind of agreements can come from that place of safety, creating that safety. Does that help?
Yes. Also,
Yes.
like trying to think about that from a solo poly or a single perspective is you make agreements with yourself,
Yeah, you're totally making agreements with yourself and making sure you're like feeling in integrity with yourself in these agreements. And if something is feeling off, it's like, what's feeling off and why? And really coming back to it and doing the reflection. Open relationships in general, I'll say, are so much about holding that mirror up in front of us and saying, who are we and how are we showing up in life, and how are we opening ourselves to give and receive love? And so really being transparent with yourself and in integrity with yourself is huge. All right, let me check our time. We've got time probably for one more. All right, I saw one. How do you handle social issues? Excuse me, friends and colleagues. Well, I don't know if they're, excuse me, guys, sorry. I don't know if they have to be issues, so I'm gonna be careful about wording. How do we handle who we're going to reveal our relationship with or about to in the larger sense? I would say is completely up to you and when you feel safe in being transparent and who you feel who you feel safe in being transparent to and with. So in my situation, when I decided to come out of the closet as being poly, I lived in a very liberal, progressive city where, hundreds, thousands of people are open. So it wasn't so weird. But it still was really, really scary. And so I chose who could I open up to one at a time that felt safe. And I started testing the waters with just having discussions of like, what do you think about this TV show that has to do with open relationships? What do you think about open relationships in general? Have you heard anything about it? And just feelers, right? And if it felt safe to me, and if they were responding in a way that wasn't super judgmental or closed, then I could start talking about that and be like, hey, I think that I want to explore this, or I think that I am identifying as this right now. And then I, open up it from a very soft, gentle spot. And if the response was rejection, that's not a person I wanted to talk with right then. And so as I grew my community and my support system of people who I could rely on and trust, then I felt stronger to just be myself authentically in more and more situations. And they aren't all going to be smooth. There are definitely people who are not okay with open relationship styles, and that's okay. That's their choice. But I have enough people in my community that are supportive that it didn't make as much of a big deal. And I got support when it was a big deal. I got professional support, therapeutic and coaching support when it was a big deal to my heart, when I felt like, people I love so much can't love and accept me in this way. How can I process that pain? So there are some other great questions and things coming up, and we are at time. And I just want to say, Julie, you asked, how do you handle abusive partner, and what do you do when the relationship is not working out? That's a whole nother red flag. Abuse is, let me just quickly say, if you have an abusive partner, please seek professional support. Like now, go out and find a therapist who can support you in that. Abuse is not something that changes easily, and it's usually generational, and it has deep, deep wounds, and how we show up in relationship with these partners is often, there's a lot of, I am the granddaughter of an alcoholic, and I still display these patterns of codependency where I can notice that I can enable people who have these tendencies. So I have to be careful, and I have to learn what I'm doing too in these relationships. And so having somebody who's professionally trained who can help you identify what's going on in the abusive situation and how you can both heal and change is really important in getting support. So if that's happening for anyone, please seek support. If you don't know where to go, message me and I can help you find resources. All right. And with all of that, I'm going to be posting this in the group. Thank you all so much for showing up today. If there are I like to do a mastermind around once a month or so, and I also do live Q&As. So if there are topics you're like, I really want to know about this, please message me or put it in the group of like, I'd love to know more about this specific rabbit hole. And then I can put something together, or we can do a Q&A and hop on and get you some free coaching. So thank you everyone for showing up today. I really appreciate it. You can unmute, say goodbye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you all.
Blessings.